Is arguing in front of your kids a bad thing or is it a good thing? I want to get everyone's comments down in the comment section on this one. Jordan Peterson, and I just saw a clip of another doctor, psychologist, talking about this. And me and my wife had gotten a little spat the other day, and it made me think about it and want to make this video. Their line of thinking is, and I tend to agree with them, is that kids that see their mom and dad, mom and dad, argue things out and come to a resolution and continue to stay together and, get over it and get past it, tend to fare better in their marriages. This doctor, this clip that I just saw was talking about how high divorce rates are, and most of them happen within like the first year before the wedding's even paid off. And it's because they have some big blow up fight and they don't know how to deal with it and they just separate. They're like, we're too different or whatever. Some of it could be too, a lot of people don't really live together before they get married. They get married and then they move in together and they don't really know how each other operate. Fortunately for my wife and I, we had lived together for like 10 years before we'd gotten married. So, you know, we already knew, what we were getting into once we got married. But, our kids have seen plenty of arguments, between my wife and I. And my older son, unfortunately, got to see some pretty ugly arguments, when I was an addict and, when he was younger, I was drinking a lot. And he got to see a lot of ugly arguments, which probably weren't too healthy. But his mom and I always stuck it out and always, she's put up with me this whole time and for whatever reason. And he got to see, that big blow up fights doesn't need to be the end of a relationship, and I know him and his girlfriend have had their issues and stuff like that, and they're still together and they're doing good. But I don't really remember ever seeing my parents argue. And my wife says the same thing, that she doesn't remember seeing her parents argue. And not to say that they didn't, I'm sure they did, but I think they just did it in private. They did it in the bedroom or when we weren't around. So I don't know that I did not learn, how to resolve things from them. But I mean, I definitely, I've had issues throughout my life, with friends or coworkers, or, there was a time that I gotten in a fist fight with a really close friend of mine over a bag of flaming hot Cheetos, like the most trivial thing ever. There was a little bit of drinking involved in that fight, but we had gotten in a fist fight, and a couple days later, a week later, we were over it. You know what I mean? We let bygones be bygones. We were buddies before. We're not gonna let a 99-cent bag of flaming hot Cheetos. That's back when a bag of flaming hot Cheetos only cost 99 cents. So yeah, I tend to believe that kids seeing their parents resolve issues and work things out, or as teaching them that, these big, arguing with your spouse or having a disagreement with, your girlfriend, your wife, a friend, doesn't have to be the end of it. It doesn't have to be, you can work through things. You're not always going to agree on everything, and having disagreements can be healthy. The one thing that my wife does that drives me crazy in front of the kids, and this probably isn't, I don't want to say a good thing necessarily that I want them to pick up on, is, I tell my kid something or I'm trying to reprimand them for something, and she undermines me and comes in and argues on their defense and makes excuses for them. And I told her, I was like, you can't do that. You can't be coming in and jumping in and on their behalf. If you have a disagreement with it, we can talk about that in private and, resolve it for the next time it comes up. But them seeing you always come to their defense, they're always going to turn to you because they know mom is going to, undermine dad. And then they pin us against each other in that way, where, now the heat's not on them. Now mom and dad are arguing back and forth, and they get a they get a run off. So yeah, you know, I mean, that's my thoughts on it. I definitely think that it's good to, as long as it's healthy. You know, I'm not talking about if you're in a relationship where it's every single night or once a week that you guys are in these crazy fights and you're throwing the coffee mug at the wall and yelling and screaming at each other and slamming doors and punching holes in the wall. That's not good. That's not healthy. And a lot of that was me earlier in life. You know, I was pretty angry. I was a pretty angry person. A lot of it had to do with substance abuse, for sure. You know, I never hit my wife. You know, if you're in a relationship where you're getting abused, definitely not that. That's definitely not what I'm talking about here. I did have one of my viewers make a comment about one of my other videos. She was in a really nasty relationship where she was abused a lot by her husband, and she was sticking it out for the kids until one night, I guess he hit her in front of the kids, and it got pretty ugly, it sounds like, and she finally had to call it quits and move on. So I'm definitely not talking about that. I'm definitely not saying, you know, your kids should see those kinds of fights and then see you resolve them. That's unhealthy, not only for the kids, but unhealthy for you, unhealthy for your partner. That's just not, that you need to get, I don't want to say other help, but you definitely other help. You definitely need to reflect a lot on yourself and change, you know. And like I said, that was me. I'm not saying I'm some role model and I've been a perfect person, because I'm far from that, you know. I'm just trying to flesh out these ideas and kind of get other people's opinions on them and stuff, because I definitely think it's more beneficial that kids learn how to deal with their emotions rather than just hide from them and act like they're not there and ignore them. And it teaches them, you know, to overcome adversity, you know, throughout their life, and to understand that you're going to have disagreements. You know, things aren't always going to go your way. You know, life isn't all peaches and rainbows. You know, thinking that your, you know, parents never fought, and, you know, the first girlfriend you get, you start getting in arguments with her, and you're like, man, well, my parents never fought, and so that means I shouldn't be in disagreements with my girlfriend, so I got to break up with you, because that's not how all relationships are. Because it's not. You're going to get in arguments. You're going to get in disagreements. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. This has been something on my mind for the last couple of days. Like I said, me and my wife got into some little tiff over something, and my son was sitting on the couch and he got to see us go back and forth a little bit. And, you know, after that, we cooled off and packed up for baseball practice. My son's in All-Stars now, so we've been having baseball practice every single night this week. So we just went off to baseball practice and moved on. That was the end of it. It definitely too, maybe not so much ignoring it and just waiting till each other cool off and going on like it didn't happen. I mean, definitely wait till each other cooled off and you can have a more level-headed, rational conversation, because we tend to just sweep things under the rug, you know, where it's just once we're cooled off, we kind of just go on about our lives and not really address what the argument was over, and like what can be done for the future to avoid those arguments or to resolve whatever the issue was. So yeah, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Till next time.